The three big things I'm going to cover in this video. Number one, what was the biggest surprise in 2022 in Lake Martin home sales? Number two, what neighborhood totally changed the game for lot sales in 2022? And then lastly, what are my predictions for the real estate market on Lake Martin in 2023? I do videos like this all the time, so if this content is at all important to you and meaningful to you and giving you value, please subscribe to my channel so that I can know this is helping you. All right, let's get right to it. This is Waterfront home sales on Lake Martin. How did the year finish off, and how did it compare? How does it compare to previous years? All right, as we can see, we had to go back. Well, first let me just say, the total waterfront homes sold in 2022 for the entire Lake Martin waterfront home market was 280 homes. All right, that's all agents, all brokerages. It's coming from the Lake Martin MLS. And so that is actually down about 26% from the prior year. In 2021, it was 377. The COVID year was like 482. It was wild and crazy. But I wanted to chart this because this is actually the fewest numbers of waterfront homes sold since 2013. So that's why I wanted to chart. In 2013, we had 263. The next year, it was 283. So that is the lowest amount since 2013. Okay, so a big question I get is, well, the sales are down because there's not any inventory, right? Well, in prior years, that answer has been yes, but right now the answer is no. Let's track the inventory that was available in December, and just to give you an example for December. In 2020, there were 79 homes for sale in December. In 2021, there were 51, and this year was 77. So it actually went up. So our inventory is up from last year, but it still is lower than our 5-year average. Our 5-year average is about 130 homes in December. So you may say, well, John, you're taking a snapshot and you're drawing a lot of conclusions, but I can tell you this. The inventory in 2022 was consistently lower every single month, like I think 11 out of 12 months, if memory serves. Inventory was higher in 22 than it was in 21, but sales were lower, and it ended up being the same. Sales were lower in 22 than they were in 21. So it's a really short way to say this. Sales are down, inventory is up, but inventory is still below our 5-year. And if you wanna deep dive on my 2021 market report, I'll put a little link up in this, and so you can deep dive into that. But what I want to show you here is that the very simple math of the fact that sales are down and inventory is up, although inventory is still a little bit below. I think this is why we're shifting into a buyer's market here at Lake Martin in 2023. I'm going to go more in depth in this at the very end of this video, so please hang on to that. Okay, this next slide is percent of sales. So what I did was I took all of the sales for 2022 and I broke them down by bands so you can kind of see the general price ranges of all of these sales. And I listed 2020 and 2021 so we can kind of compare, okay, of all those 280 sales, what were the percentages? Where do they fall in price? Okay, this last year in 2022, $0 to $250,000, all these are percentages, by the way. About 2% from home sales from 251 to 500. That constituted about 18% of sales. 500 to 750 was about 24% of sales. And this is residences, right? So this is houses, condos, townhomes, residences, not lots. 750 to $1 million was about 19%, okay? $1 million to $1.25 is about 13%. $1.25 million to $1.5 million was 5%. $1.5 million to $1.75, I'm having to crouch down, it's bad on my knees. $1.075 million to $2 million was about 2%. And then over $2 million, the home sold over $2 million on Lake Martin last year was 10%. So of those 280 sales, I guess 28 of them were over $2 million. All right, so what conclusions can we draw from the distribution of these percentages? Well, if you remember last year, the biggest, for those of you who want to chase back and look at that again, the big movement last year was the 250 to 500 moved up and shifted up. The big percentage went to 500 to 750, and then likewise it shifted up. So we saw a shift up in prices in 2021. What was the shift this year? Well, if you just look and you see, all right, this was the biggest band, and then also this was huge, but really the biggest thing I want to draw your attention to is not only did the whole thing shift up, it decreased from 250 to 500. But if you look at $1 million to $1.25 million, fully 13% of sales, and it started off at 6. That's basically double what it was in 2020. So the COVID year 2020, things were happening, but you can see how prices have crept up even since the COVID year, all right? And so another huge statistic right here is 10% of the homes were over $2 million. And so I'm going to really have to probably start breaking out that $2 million number, because just saying over $2 million, 10% of our sales are there. So that really surprised me too. And if you want to know more about prices, hang on to the video. I'm going to deep dive and give you some quick hits about home prices a little later in the video. All right, so what about waterfront lots? These are, again, Lake Martin year to date, entire lake, all agencies, all brokerages. What happened? For sales, there were 117 waterfront lot sales, 100 or so for the year, and that is down about 15%. So home sales were down 26%, the lot sales were down about 15%. And but what did that translate into inventory? Is inventory the same here? Well, inventory is actually down for lots this year, and this was, I looked in December, but again, this trend followed the all year. And we had a decrease of about 16% in inventory. So the sales decrease of 15% and inventory decrease of about 16% washes out. And so what I'm seeing here is that waterfront lot sales are still really hot, because our 5-year average this time of year is 78 lots for sale. So we're still well below the 5-year average, yet, and it's still going down, whereas home inventory was going up. I think that for lots, they are still ahead of the curve. Home sales has a good chance, I think, of turning. I think lot sales are pretty strong, because as we're going to see later, there was one neighborhood that Russell Lands introduced and that really changed lot sales for the year. I wanted to break down the percent of sales for lots too. Like, okay, if you're going to buy a lot at Lake Martin, what can you expect to pay? Well, of the 115, 17 lots we had, about 2 of those lots were $0 to $100,000. Okay, so if your budget is under $100,000, that means you're looking at about 2% of the market. Okay, and 100 to 200 is about 13. And so our biggest bands really are here and here. And then you might say, well, what about 600 plus? Yes, of those lots, 46% of the lots sold this year, 2022, were over $600,000, and it's primarily due to one neighborhood that I mentioned earlier called the Heritage that Russell Lands has introduced. It's going to be a really cool golf course community. I'm not a golfer, but it's really cool. It's been designed, and that they did phase 1, and they sold 39 of all these sales. 39 of those are in the Heritage, and I think every single one of them was over $600,000, and so that really skewed up. Usually I say, well, one neighborhood doesn't really affect anything. Well, this year it did, because it shifted. When you say, hey, 46% of your lot sales were over $600,000 in the top category, it definitely affected lot sales at the lake. All right, this is my quick hit slide for home sales. What was the average home sale price? For 2020, it was $726,000. For 2021, it's $873,000. What happened in 2022? It was just over $1 million, $1,031,000. So the average home price on Lake Martin was $1,031,000. For the first time ever, it broke the $1 million barrier. I actually looked into it a little bit further. If you remove condos out of that, it actually goes up to $1.18 million. I didn't remove condos for these two numbers, so I don't really count that as official, I guess, because I guess I could, but I haven't. So for the first time, average home price on Lake Martin was over $1 million. What about the minimum and the maximum? What was the highest sale on the lake and what was the lowest sale? Lowest sale was $175,000, and it was I believe a 1-bedroom home. And then what was the highest sale? It was a $4.6 million home, and it was in the Ridge. Some of y'all may know where the Ridge is, but that was where the maximum sale. Last year, the maximum sale in 2021 was over $7 million. So I guess in one respect you could say it's down, but not really. Those are huge sales that only happen once every blue moon. Okay, what about condos and what about new home sales? A lot of people, when I sell real estate for a living here, and I get this question a lot, like about how many sales are condos? Looking back, 22% in 2020, 16% last year, kind of back to the average, about 21% of home sales last year were condos, pretty average year. What about new home sales? It was only 7%. So that was a little bit odd because it's usually in the mid-teens like that. So only about 7% of home sales in 2022 were new homes. And what about, here's another question I get a lot. Because we're a second home market and you get a lot of cash sales. And so last year, that was about 25%. So if you're selling a home and you ask the question, I sit down with my sellers and they get the question a lot, okay, well, what are the odds that the person's going to buy it with cash? About 25%. Okay, what are my quick hits for lot sales last year in 2022? The minimum lot sale amount was $78,000, and it was a lot that was on the north end of the lake, north of the railroad trestle, in what I call the North Lake area. The maximum was a lot that I've mentioned before at $3.1 million for the lot alone in a new neighborhood called the Heritage that I've mentioned before. And so I thought that was a pretty awesome statistic. I think that is the highest paid for a residential lot ever on the lake. I'd have to check my numbers on that, but if somebody out there, if you know of one, please let me know because I think that's a record. And that led me to kind of think about the neighborhoods that have been sold lots, the different neighborhoods that lot sales. And the number one, without a doubt, this year was the Heritage. And so they sold 39 lots there. And that's a Russell Lands neighborhood that I mentioned earlier, but they sold, that was phase one of the Heritage. And so if I looked at other neighborhoods like River Oaks, Rain Tree, some Russell Lands North Lake ones, that was 11. There were 9 sold in the Ridge and Willow Point and then Willow Glen and all the Willows, what I call it, the Willows. That was 9 of them. 7 were sold on Miners Cove, another North Lake neighborhood. Stillwood is an Alabama Power Development. They sold 7 on the south side of Lake and Blue Creek. And then like what I'm calling no neighborhood, about 22 sales. So as you can see, like the Heritage dominated, like hats off to Russell Lands, absolutely blew away all of the other neighborhoods opening up that phase one. And normally it's not like this because they're the only really true, Russell Lands is the only really true developer. Alabama Power's a big landholder, but they're a power company. And so I would say that this won't happen in 2023, but I think it is because they're releasing phase 2 of the Heritage in 2023. So I anticipate a similar effect inside the MLS for Heritage phase 2. And that got me thinking, I wonder if you added all the sales, what it would look like. So what I did was I took all the different neighborhoods and I thought, okay, if it's in a Russell Lands neighborhood, there were 71 lots sold. In other neighborhoods, but not Russell Lands, there were 22 sales. And then when I'm calling just no neighborhood, 22 sales. So if you come to me, if you're a lot buyer and I'm helping you, and you come to me and you say, hey, look, I don't want to be in a neighborhood. I just want to be in kind of off of my own sort of cabin in the woods. You've got about 22% this year of the market would have been, made up that flavor, okay, if you will. Now, what about different? Now, we'll say this: if you subtract out the Heritage from these other 71 sales, you would get to about, like if you said, 115 minus 39 is about 70 something sales, which is more of like a normal lot year for us. So the Heritage is definitely an outsized impact. Again, congratulations to them on a great year. They did a great job with it. All right, here's where I try to make some predictions, and of course these things can go wrong, but I do think that 2023 may be the first year in a long time that we actually have a decrease in waterfront home prices. Why? Because of what I laid it out earlier, is supply and demand. Sales are down 26%. Inventory is up, even though it's still under our 5-year. What will prices go to? I don't know. I think it'll be a couple of percent, maybe. I don't think it's going to be a crash. I think that's fake news because we're still historically under our 5-year inventory average, and we're not seeing a whole lot of spec homes. Remember that slide I showed you that only 7% of homes were new home sales? So I don't think it's going to be a huge decrease. Lots, I don't think lots are there yet. I think their prices are still going up. I don't think we're going to see a price decrease for lots. just because of where they are in the sales cycle. So if I'm a seller, though, I would really pay attention. You would think, hey, times are always great, we can go up on price. I think sellers that go into 23 and price their homes thinking, okay, I'm going to get a 15% gain this year like I do every year, I think they're going to sit on the market, and I think they're going to get stigmatized. So sellers, I'm counseling them to not go up on your price and be crazy. Buyers, you may be in luck. For all those buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines saying, hey, look, I'm going to wait until this thing slows down. The time, I think, is now for buyers. If I can help you at all, please give me a call. I'm John Coley with Lake Martin Voice Realty. And if you found any value in this video whatsoever, please subscribe to my channel, and I'd appreciate it.